The rain hammered against the windows of the downtown Las Vegas hotel like bullets against armor. Inside room 2847, Mike Tyson sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his trembling hands. The championship belt that once defined his entire existence lay forgotten on the floor, its gold surface tarnished and cold. Everything he had worked for, everything he had sacrificed, was crumbling around him like a house of cards in a hurricane. The phone call had come 3 hours ago. His longtime friend and business partner, Marcus, was dead. Not from natural causes, not from an accident, but murdered in cold blood outside a nightclub in Brooklyn. The police claimed it was a robbery gone wrong, but Tyson knew better. Marcus had been investigating something dangerous, something that connected powerful people in the boxing world to illegal activities that went far beyond the ring. Tyson's mind raced as he remembered their last conversation. Marcus had been excited, almost frantic. He said he had evidence that could expose a massive corruption scandal involving fight fixing, money laundering, and connections to organized crime. Names that would shock the world. Champions who threw fights. Promoters who controlled outcomes. Officials who took bribes. The whole system was rotten from the inside out. "Mike, you need to see this," Marcus had whispered into the phone just days before. "They've been using you, man. All these years, they've been playing you like a puppet. But I got proof now. Real proof." Now Marcus was gone, and Tyson felt the familiar rage building inside him like lava in a volcano. But this wasn't the controlled anger he channeled in the ring. This was something deeper, more dangerous. This was the fury of a man who had been betrayed by everyone he trusted. The hotel room felt like a cage. The walls seemed to close in around him as he paced back and forth, his massive frame casting long shadows in the dim light. Outside, the neon lights of Las Vegas painted the night in artificial colors, but inside his soul, everything was darkness. His phone buzzed with another call. The same unknown number that had been trying to reach him for hours. This time, he answered. "Tyson." The voice was cold, mechanical. "We need to talk." "Who was this?" Mike's voice was barely a whisper, but it carried the weight of thunder. "Someone who knows what your friend was working on. Someone who can give you the answers you're looking for. But you need to come alone. Tonight." The line went dead before Tyson could respond. He stared at the phone, his mind spinning. Every instinct told him it was a trap, but he couldn't ignore the possibility that this person might have information about Marcus's murder. He had to know the truth, no matter the cost. Tyson grabbed his jacket and headed for the door. As he reached for the handle, his phone rang again. This time it was Detective Sarah Chun from the LVPD, a cop he had worked with before during some minor incidents. "Mike, where are you right now?" Her voice was urgent, almost panicked. "At my hotel." "Why?" "Listen to me very carefully. There are people looking for you. Dangerous people. Marcus gave you something before he died, didn't he?" Tyson's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" "The files, Mike. The evidence he was collecting. They think he passed it to you. You need to get somewhere safe right now and call me back." But before she could say another word, Tyson heard footsteps in the hallway outside his room. Heavy boots. Multiple sets. Moving with military precision. He looked through the peephole and saw them. 6 men in dark suits, positioned strategically around his door. They weren't police. They were something else entirely. Something much more dangerous. Tyson's heart pounded as he realized the trap was already closing around him. Marcus had been right about everything. The corruption went deeper than anyone imagined, and now they were coming for him too. He grabbed the emergency bag he always kept packed and moved to the balcony. 27 floors up, but he had options. The building's fire escape system, the maintenance levels, the service elevators. His years of training had taught him to always have an exit strategy. As he slipped out onto the balcony, he could hear them trying to break down his door. The sound of splintering would echo through the night air. He had maybe 30 seconds before they realized he was gone. The wind whipped around him as he made his way down the external fire escape, moving with surprising grace for a man of his size. Below, the streets of Las Vegas stretched out like a neon maze. Somewhere down there, answers waited. Somewhere down there, the truth about Marcus's death was hidden. But first, he had to survive the night. As his feet touched the ground in the alley behind the hotel, Tyson heard the sound that would haunt him for the rest of his life. Police sirens. Not just one or two, but dozens. They were coming from every direction, converging on his location with military precision. He was no longer just being hunted by mysterious men in suits. Now the entire Las Vegas Police Department was involved. The standoff was about to begin. The alley behind the Belmont Hotel had become a war zone in a matter of minutes. Flashing red and blue lights painted the brick walls like a deadly disco as police cars poured in from both ends of the narrow passage. Mike Tyson pressed himself against the cold metal of a dumpster, his breathing controlled, but his mind racing at light speed. Detective Sarah Chen's voice crackled through a bullhorn somewhere in the chaos. "Mike Tyson, this is Detective Chen. We know you're back there. Come out with your hands visible and nobody gets hurt." But Tyson knew better than to trust anyone right now. If the corruption went as deep as Marcus had believed, then some of these cops might be working for the same people who killed his friend, the same people who were now trying to silence him permanently. He pulled out his phone and tried calling Chen directly, but the call went straight to voicemail. Either she was too busy coordinating the operation, or someone had made sure he couldn't reach her. Neither option was good. Through the maze of police cars and flashing lights, Tyson spotted movement on the rooftops above. Snipers were taking position, their rifle scopes glinting in the neon glow of the city. This wasn't just a simple arrest warrant. This was a full military-style operation designed to end him. His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "The package Marcus left you is in Storage Unit 247 on Industrial Boulevard. Get there alive, and you'll have everything you need to expose them all. Trust no one in uniform." Tyson deleted the message immediately, but his mind was already working on a plan. Storage Unit 247 was across town, which meant he had to get through an entire city that was now hunting him like a wild animal. But if Marcus really had left evidence there, it might be his only chance to clear his name and get justice for his murdered friend. The sound of tactical boots on fire escapes above told him the net was tightening. They were coming down from the rooftops, while the street units blocked his exits. Standard procedure for cornering a dangerous suspect. But Mike Tyson had never been a standard anything. He waited until the footsteps were directly overhead, then exploded into motion. Instead of running away from the police, he ran straight toward them, bursting through the line of patrol cars, like a linebacker breaking through a defensive line. The element of surprise bought him precious seconds as confused officers scrambled to react. "Suspect is mobile." Repeat, "Suspect is mobile and heading north on Las Vegas Boulevard." The radio chatter followed him as he sprinted through the tourist crowds, weaving between startled pedestrians and street performers. Behind him, the police response was swift and overwhelming. Squad cars peeled out of the alley with tires screaming, their sirens creating a symphony of chaos that echoed off the towering hotels and casinos. Helicopter rotors began chopping through the night air as aviation units joined the hunt. Tyson ducked into the Caesars Palace Casino, knowing that the crowds and maze-like interior would give him cover. The gaming floor was packed with tourists and gamblers, all of whom began pointing and shouting as they recognized a famous boxer running through their midst. "Oh my God, that's Mike Tyson. What's he doing here? Are those police sirens for him?" The recognition was both a blessing and a curse. While the crowds provided cover, they also made him impossible to hide. Security cameras tracked his every move, and casino security guards began following him through the labyrinth of slot machines and poker tables. He made it to the parking garage before the first wave of police officers burst through the casino's main entrance. The concrete structure echoed with the sound of running footsteps and shouted commands as officers spread out to search every level. Tyson found what he was looking for on the third level, a motorcycle parked between two SUVs. The owner had left his helmet hanging from the handlebars, a stroke of luck in a night that had been nothing but bad breaks. Tyson had learned to hotwire vehicles during his troubled youth in Brooklyn, skills he never thought he'd need again. The engine roared to life, just as flashlight beams began sweeping the parking level. He gunned the throttle and shot toward the exit ramp, leaning low over the handlebars as bullets sparked off the concrete walls around him. The chase that followed would be talked about in police academies for years to come. Mike Tyson, one of the most famous athletes in the world, racing through the streets of Las Vegas on a stolen motorcycle while dozens of police cars pursued him through the neon-lit canyons of the Strip. He weaved through traffic with the skill of a professional racer, using his knowledge of the city's layout to stay ahead of the roadblocks that were being set up at every major intersection. The helicopter above tracked him with a powerful spotlight, but the narrow alleys and underpasses of downtown Vegas provided plenty of places to break visual contact. 20 minutes into the chase, Tyson realized they weren't just trying to arrest him anymore. The shots being fired weren't warning shots aimed over his head. They were kill shots, aimed directly at him. Someone had given orders to end this permanently, and the rank-and-file officers didn't even know they were being used as executioners. As he rounded a corner onto Industrial Boulevard, Tyson saw the storage facility ahead. Row after row of identical metal units stretched into the darkness like a metallic graveyard. Unit 247 was somewhere in that maze, and inside it might be the key to everything. But between him and those answers stood the largest police response Las Vegas had ever mounted for a single suspect. Roadblocks, SWAT teams, snipers, and air support. An entire city's worth of law enforcement focused on one man. The motorcycle's engine coughed and began to sputter. He was running out of gas, and he was running out of time. Behind him, the wall of sirens and flashing lights grew closer with every second. Tyson made a decision that would change everything. Instead of trying to outrun them, he would make his stand at the storage facility. If he was going down, he was going down fighting, and he was going to make sure the truth came out before they silenced him forever. He ditched the motorcycle and disappeared into the maze of storage units, just as the first police cars arrived at the facility's entrance. The real standoff was about to begin. The storage facility felt like a steel maze designed by a madman. Endless rows of identical metal doors stretched in every direction, creating a labyrinth where shadows danced with deadly intent. Mike Tyson moved through the narrow corridors between units, his massive frame somehow silent despite the chaos erupting around him. Unit 247 was deeper in the facility than he had hoped, tucked away in a section that seemed designed for people who wanted their secrets to stay buried. As he navigated toward it, the sound of police boots on concrete grew louder. They were surrounding the entire facility, setting up a perimeter that would make escape impossible. Powerful floodlights suddenly blazed to life around the facility's borders, turning night into harsh artificial day. The helicopter circled overhead like a mechanical vulture, its spotlight sweeping back and forth between the rows of storage units. Through the gaps in the metal roofing, Tyson could see the silhouettes of snipers taking position on nearby buildings. His phone vibrated with an incoming call. Detective Chen's number flashed on the screen. "Mike, answer me. I know you can hear this." Her voice was strained, almost desperate. He answered but stayed silent, listening carefully to the background noise for clues about where she was calling from. "Mike, I know you think you can't trust anyone, but you're wrong about me. I've been investigating the same corruption Marcus was looking into. That's how I knew they were coming for you tonight. How do I know you're not one of them?" Tyson whispered into the phone, his voice barely audible over the sound of approaching footsteps. "Because if I was, you'd already be dead. I've been feeding the command center false information about your location for the last 10 minutes. That's the only reason you made it this far." Tyson considered this. It was possible she was telling the truth, but trust was a luxury he couldn't afford. Not when Marcus's blood was still fresh on someone's hands. "What do you want from me?" he asked. "I want the same thing you want. Justice for Marcus. But we need that evidence he collected, and we need to stay alive long enough to use it." "I'm at the storage facility." "I know. Unit 247, right? Marcus told me about it before he died. But Mike, you need to know something. The order came down from the top to take you alive, but there are people here who have different plans. People who are willing to claim you resisted arrest." As if to prove her point, Tyson heard the distinctive sound of tactical teams moving into position around his location. These weren't regular patrol officers anymore. These were the department's elite units, trained to handle the most dangerous situations. He found Unit 247, just as the first SWAT team reached his section of the facility. The combination lock was exactly where the anonymous text had said it would be, hidden behind a loose piece of metal siding. His fingers worked quickly, entering the combination Marcus had used for everything important in his life, his daughter's birthday. The lock clicked open just as boots thundered past his location. Inside the unit, boxes of documents were stacked floor to ceiling. Financial records, photographs, audio recordings, and video files. Marcus had been thorough in his investigation, and the evidence was overwhelming. Bank transfers between fight promoters and known crime figures. Audio recordings of conversations where fight outcomes were discussed like stock prices. Photographs of meetings between boxing officials and men who had no legitimate business in the sport. Video footage of cash exchanges that happened in the shadows of major championship fights. But the most damaging evidence was a ledger written in Marcus's careful handwriting. Names, dates, amounts, and fight results. A complete record of how the boxing world's biggest matches had been manipulated for years. Champions who were paid to lose. Judges who scored fights according to predetermined outcomes. Referees who stopped fights at exactly the right moments. And at the center of it all, a name that made Tyson's blood run cold. Vincent the Shark Torino, a man who officially worked as a boxing promoter, but who everyone knew was connected to organized crime. According to Marcus's notes, Torino had been orchestrating the corruption from the beginning, using his connections to both the legitimate boxing world and the criminal underworld to control outcomes and launder money. Tyson's own name appeared in the ledger multiple times, but not as a participant in the corruption. Instead, the notes showed how fights had been arranged around him, how opponents had been chosen not for their skill, but for their willingness to cooperate. The realization hit him like a physical blow. His entire career had been built on lies. Mike Tyson. The voice came through a bullhorn, echoing between the metal walls of the storage facility. This is Commander Rodriguez with Las Vegas SWAT. You are completely surrounded. Come out with your hands visible, and no one will be harmed. Tyson quickly grabbed the most important documents and stuffed them into his jacket. The rest would have to stay behind, but what he had taken was enough to expose the entire network. If he could get it to the right people. He pulled out his phone and called Chin back. "I've got the evidence," he whispered, "but I'm trapped." "I know. The SWAT teams are moving into final position. But Mike, listen carefully. There's a maintenance tunnel that runs under the facility. It connects to the storm drain system. If you can get to Unit 189, there's an access panel in the floor." "How do you know about that?" "Because I've been planning this for weeks. Ever since Marcus first contacted me about the investigation." Tyson looked at the unit numbers around him. 189 was 3 rows over, but between him and safety stood at least 24 heavily armed tactical officers. "Mike, there's something else you need to know." Chen's voice dropped to an urgent whisper. "Torino has people inside the department. I don't know who they are, but the order has already gone out. They're going to claim you fired first." As if summoned by her words, the sound of weapons being readied echoed through the facility. Safeties clicking off, magazines being checked, radio chatter coordinating firing positions. Tyson realized he had perhaps minutes before the situation exploded into violence. The evidence in his jacket could expose decades of corruption and bring justice for Marcus, but only if he survived long enough to deliver it. He took a deep breath and prepared to move. The maze of storage units had become a battlefield, and he was outnumbered 50-1. But Mike Tyson had never backed down from a fight in his life, and he wasn't about to start now. The final phase of the standoff was about to begin. The maintenance tunnel beneath the storage facility was a concrete nightmare that stretched into absolute darkness. Mike Tyson crawled through the cramped space, his massive shoulders scraping against the tunnel walls as water dripped steadily from overhead pipes. The documents in his jacket crinkled with every movement, a constant reminder of the explosive truth he carried. Above him, he could hear the SWAT team systematically searching every storage unit. Metal doors banged open, voices shouted coordinates, and boots thundered across the concrete floors. They were getting closer to Unit 189, where they would discover his escape route. His phone buzzed with a text from Detective Chun. Tunnel leads to storm drain outlet behind Marquez Street. News van waiting there. Channel 8 reporter Sarah Kim. She's clean. Tyson had to trust someone, and Chun had been right about everything so far. The tunnel, the escape route, even the timing of the police response. If she was working with the enemy, she had already had dozens of chances to get him killed. The tunnel opened into a larger storm drain that allowed him to finally stand upright. The sound of rushing water echoed through the concrete chamber, and distant streetlights filtered down through drainage grates above. He was now beneath the city streets, in a world that existed parallel to the chaos above. His phone rang. Detective Chin again. "Mike, where are you?" "In the storm drains, heading toward Marquez Street." "Good, but we have a problem. Word just came down that they found evidence of explosives in your hotel room." Tyson stopped walking. "That's impossible." "I know it's impossible, but it's the story they're going to use. They're painting you as a domestic terrorist who was planning to bomb the courthouse, where the grand jury was going to hear testimony about boxing corruption." The pieces clicked into place in Tyson's mind. Someone had known about Marcus's investigation all along. They had been watching, waiting, planning the perfect way to eliminate both the evidence and anyone who might testify about it. Marcus's murder was just the beginning. "Chun, they're going to kill me the moment they see me, aren't they?" "Not if we do this right. The reporter is someone I trust. Sarah Kim has been investigating Torino for months on her own. If we can get the documents to her and get your testimony on camera, it becomes much harder for them to make you disappear." 20 minutes later, Tyson emerged from a drainage outlet behind a row of abandoned warehouses on Marquez Street. The news van was exactly where Chun had promised. Its satellite dish extended into the night sky like a technological beacon of hope. Sarah Kim was younger than he had expected, probably in her early 30s, with the intense focus of someone who had spent years chasing stories that powerful people didn't want told. Her camera operator, a grizzled veteran named Tony, had his equipment ready before Tyson had fully emerged from the drainage tunnel. "Mr. Tyson, I'm Sarah Kim from Channel 8 News. Detective Chin told me you have evidence about corruption in professional boxing." Tyson pulled the documents from his jacket. Even in the dim light from the van's interior, the financial records and photographs were clearly visible. Sarah's eyes widened as she flipped through page after page of documented corruption. "This is incredible," she whispered. "Do you understand what you have here? This proves that dozens of championship fights were fixed over the past decade." "My friend Marcus died for this information," Tyson said, his voice heavy with emotion. "They murdered him because he was going to expose the truth." Sarah looked at her camera operator. "Tony, we need to go live. Right now." "Are you crazy? It's 2 in the morning." "This can't wait until the morning show. If Mr. Tyson is right about this conspiracy, his life is in immediate danger. We broadcast this now, or we might never get another chance." As Tony set up his equipment, Sarah interviewed Tyson about everything he knew. Marcus's investigation, the evidence they had found, and the corruption network that stretched from small-time promoters all the way to the highest levels of professional boxing. But their impromptu broadcast was interrupted by the sound of approaching sirens. Through the van's rear window, they could see police cars converging on their location from multiple directions. "They found us," Tyson said grimly. Sarah made a decision that would define her entire career. Instead of running, she ordered Tony to keep filming. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Sarah Kim reporting live from Las Vegas, where we have just received explosive evidence of widespread corruption in professional boxing. With me is former heavyweight champion Mike Tyson, who is currently being pursued by police in connection with the murder of his friend and business partner Marcus Williams." The police cars surrounded the news van, but they didn't immediately move to arrest anyone. Through the flashing lights and radio chatter, a familiar figure approached the van. Detective Chun, flanked by 2 officers Tyson didn't recognize. "Mike, you need to come with us." "Now, is he under arrest?" Sarah asked, still filming. "That depends on what he does in the next 60 seconds, Chun replied. But her eyes weren't on Tyson. They were focused on something behind the van. Tyson turned to see what she was looking at and felt his blood turn to ice. Vincent the Shark, Torino was walking toward them through the maze of police cars, flanked by men in expensive suits who looked nothing like law enforcement officers. "Detective Chun," Torino called out, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I think there's been a misunderstanding here." "No misunderstanding, Mr. Torino," Chun replied, her hand moving to her service weapon. "Mike Tyson is under the protection of the Las Vegas Police Department." Torino smiled, but there was nothing friendly about the expression. "Detective, I think you'll find that the situation is more complicated than you realize." That's when Tyson noticed that half the officers surrounding them were pointing their weapons not at him, but at Detective Chun. The corruption went deeper than any of them had imagined. The standoff had reached its climax, and the outcome would determine not just Tyson's fate, but whether the truth about decades of boxing corruption would ever see the light of day. The standoff in the abandoned warehouse district had become a deadly game of chess played with guns and badges. Mike Tyson stood between Detective Chun and Vincent Torino, surrounded by police officers who were no longer sure which orders to follow. The red lights from the news van's camera continued to roll, broadcasting the confrontation live to anyone awake at this ungodly hour. "Mr. Torino," Sarah Kim said, keeping her microphone trained on the crime boss, "are you denying the allegations contained in these documents?" Torino's laugh was cold and calculating. "Young lady, I'm denying nothing because these documents are forgeries created by a disturbed man who was extorting legitimate businessmen in the boxing industry. Marcus Williams was a blackmailer and a thief." "That's a lie." Tyson's voice exploded across the parking lot like thunder. "Marcus was murdered because he was going to expose your whole operation." "Mr. Tyson," Torino replied smoothly, "you're clearly under tremendous stress. The evidence found in your hotel room suggests you were planning something terrible. But I'm a forgiving man. Surrender peacefully, and I'm sure we can work something out." Detective Chin stepped forward, her weapon drawn but pointed at the ground. "Nobody's surrendering to you, Torino. This is still my jurisdiction, and these are still my streets." "Are they, Detective?" Torino gestured to the officers surrounding them. "I count at least 6 men here who understand the real situation. Men who know that sometimes the greater good requires difficult choices." As if on cue, several of the officers shifted their positions, their weapons now clearly aimed at Chun and Tyson rather than providing protection. The corruption within the department was deeper and more extensive than anyone had realized. But Chun had been preparing for this moment longer than anyone knew. "Tony," she called to the camera operator, "make sure you're getting all of this, especially the part where Mr. Torino just threatened a police officer on live television." "I threatened no one," Torino said, but his confidence was starting to crack. "Really? Because I'm wearing a wire, and everything you've said in the last 5 minutes has been recorded and transmitted directly to FBI headquarters in Washington. Agent Martinez, are you receiving this?" A new voice came through Chen's radio, clear enough for everyone to hear. "Copy that, Detective Chen. We have multiple units moving to your location now. Mr. Torino, you're under federal arrest for racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder." The sound of helicopters filled the air, but these weren't police helicopters. The FBI's aviation unit was descending on the parking lot with military precision. Floodlights blazed to life, turning the abandoned warehouse district into daylight. Torino's face went pale as he realized the trap that had been closing around him. "Chun, you have no idea what you've done. The people I work with don't forgive this kind of betrayal." "The people you work with are about to join you in federal prison," Chun replied. "Mike, show the camera those documents one more time." Tyson held up the evidence that Marcus had died to collect. Financial records, photographs, and recorded conversations that detailed years of corruption. But the most damaging evidence was still in his jacket pocket, a digital recording Marcus had made just hours before his death. "Tony, can you play audio through your system?" Sarah asked. The camera operator nodded and connected Tyson's phone to the van's speakers. Marcus Williams's voice filled the night air, clear and unmistakable. "Vincent Torino just offered me $2 million to destroy my evidence and disappear. When I refused, He told me I had 24 hours to reconsider before something unfortunate happened to me. I'm recording this on March 15th at 11:47 p.m. If something happens to me, Torino ordered it. The recording continued with details about specific fights that had been fixed, including championship bouts that had generated hundreds of millions of dollars in illegal gambling profits. Marcus had been meticulous in documenting everything, knowing that his life depended on the thoroughness of his evidence. As the recording played, FBI agents flooded the parking lot. Torino and several of the corrupt police officers were taken into custody, their protests and denials falling on deaf ears. The evidence was overwhelming, and more importantly, it was all being broadcast live on television. Agent Martinez approached Tyson as the chaos around them began to settle. "Mr. Tyson, we're going to need your full cooperation in this investigation. But I want you to know that you're not a suspect. You're a victim, just like your friend Marcus." "Will this bring him back?" Tyson asked, his voice heavy with grief. "No, but it will make sure his death wasn't meaningless." Over the following weeks, the evidence Marcus had gathered led to the largest corruption scandal in the history of professional sports. Dozens of fighters, promoters, judges, and officials were arrested. Championships were stripped, records were expunged, and millions of dollars in ill-gotten gains were seized by federal authorities. Mike Tyson's testimony before the federal grand jury lasted 3 days. He detailed everything he knew about the corruption network, even when it meant admitting that some of his own victories might have been tainted by the system's manipulation. Detective Sarah Chun was promoted to lead the police department's new anti-corruption unit. Her investigation had not only exposed the boxing scandal, but had also rooted out corruption within her own department that went back decades. Sarah Kim won a Pulitzer Prize for her coverage of a story, but she always insisted that the real heroes were Marcus Williams, who died seeking the truth, and Mike Tyson, who risked everything to make sure that truth saw the light of day. 6 months later, Tyson returned to the storage facility where it all began. Unit 247 was empty now, its contents having been seized as evidence in the federal case. But he didn't come to look at the unit. He came to remember his friend. As he stood in the quiet corridor between the metal doors, he could almost hear Marcus's voice again, passionate and determined to expose the truth, no matter the cost. The corruption network had been destroyed, justice had been served, and the boxing world would never be the same. The standoff was over, but the fight for integrity in professional sports would continue forever. Mike Tyson walked away from a storage facility knowing that sometimes the most important victories happen outside the ring, in the shadows where truth battles against lies, and where ordinary people become heroes by simply refusing to stay silent in the face of evil. Marcus Williams had not died in vain. The truth had set them all free.